guys, what's good? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about tail walking and what you can do to avoid it. Okay, so tail walking can be super dangerous. So in this video I want to talk about what causes this phenomenon of tail walking and what you can do to control it with technique and gear trim. So let's get into it. So what happens when you encounter a tail walking with your windsurfing board is that the wind is getting under your board and basically lifting the board up. And this can be really uncontrollable and very hard to get the board back down. And especially when you're going downwind and really fast, you can encounter tail walking quite frequently because the wind will get under your board. So basically when slalom sailing or speed sailing, you always want to be on the edge. You want to have as little wetted surface area on your board as possible, because the less area you have that is really hitting the water, the faster you will be. But of course there's always the chance that the board is getting too loose and wind is getting under the board and starts lifting out of the water, and this can result in really big crashes and become really dangerous. So let's look at the technique, what you can do to avoid this. So basically when you watch any PWA sailor race, you can see that there's not a lot of movement in their body and in their whole rig. The sail stays really stable and not moving around as well as the sailor. And they keep constant pressure with their legs on the boards. Because if you do not put enough pressure on the board, especially onto the front foot, the board doesn't have any downward force on the board and can start lifting. And yeah, that's what a lot of sailors get wrong sometimes. Like they feel like they lose control, so instead of leaning back and putting pressure onto the board, they go more to the front and over the board and do not put as much pressure on the front foot. And by doing that, the board has the chance to basically get into the tail walking mode. So basically what you want to do is you want to keep as much body tension while sailing at full speed as possible. Like especially through your core and legs, this is what translates the power of your body onto the board and prevents it from lifting out of the water. And what you can also do to help that is use a little bit longer harness lines if you feel like you're struggling with tail walking from time to time. Because by using longer harness lines, you will actually have a little bit more time to react and you get a little bit further away from the board, so you can put more pressure onto the board and prevent it from spinning out. I like to use shorter harness lines, and while I noticed I'm getting a little bit faster by doing this, by using the shorter harness lines, I also noticed that the chance of tail walking actually increases because I have less time to react, so to say, with the shorter harness lines and get a little bit more tail walking. Okay, now let's get into the trim of your gear. What you can do if you encounter a lot of tail walking is you can actually do a couple of things. So first of all, if you have a lot of tail walking, you might have too big of a fin under your board, because bigger fins, and especially softer fins as well, they create a lot of lift, and by doing that you get less wetted surface area. But as I mentioned previously, this can also result in tail walking. So if you have too big or too soft of a fin, you might have too much lift under your board and the board is riding too freely and you cannot control it anymore. So you might want to use a smaller fin if you have too much tail walking and feel you struggle at full speed. The next thing you can do is basically a combination of the boom height and the mast foot position is basically also determining how loose your board will ride. So if you have the boom higher up and if you have the mast foot further to the back, you will have more lift on your board, the board rides more freely and you might encounter tail walking. On the other hand, if you move the boom lower and if you move the mast foot further to the front, the board rides less freely and you will not encounter spin out that much. So it basically always depends on the condition, what you want to do. Like for me, if it gets really rough, I don't like to change the boom height too much. I just like to put the mast foot a little bit further to the front just to get the board a little bit more down and don't encounter this tail walking. But of course, yeah, it's always living on the edge because you want to get maximum speed out of your gear. So you always have to find this fine line in between still having control and in letting the board ride as freely as possible. And yeah, that's what professional sailors, I think, are always looking to maximize, like get this perfect point to ride as fast as possible. Alright guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this very short tutorial. I just wanted to touch on the topic because I found it super interesting, and in recent sessions I've noticed it myself that I rigged the gear to provide too much lift, and I had a couple of tailwalks. Luckily I didn't crash big time, but I had some really scary moments. So yeah, I just wanted to do this video. And alright, see you in the next one guys. Cheers!